giving. And the hardest working team in podcasting is still hard at work making you great content. Today, I'm going to be recording an episode that's like, I think maybe 2 weeks from now, or next week's episode of the Startup Checklist. So you get to get it a week early, and you get it in the raw format before they edit, in case I mispronounce something with my dyslexia or otherwise screw something up. Surge Dog is here. Noti. So hi to my noties. And do me a favor on my team. When you're using the Restream.io login, just put your name, producer Justin, producer Rachel, producer Nick, Sir Charles, whatever. This way people know who's saying what. So I'm going to say smash. Thumbs up for your squad. Got Jason at the end. Cool. All right, everybody. Welcome. We got our one. Harris is here on Facebook, our one Facebook person. I wonder if anybody else is on Facebook sees this. If you're on Facebook, just comment and just let us know that you saw this, because I don't know. And LinkedIn also. I'm always wondering about LinkedIn and Twitter. I don't think Twitter, maybe you could reply to the tweet and just say, hey, JCal. And we would know if Twitter replies
come brought into this chat for us.
Twitter replies are not brought into this chat for us. You're saying Restream doesn't support that?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
But
well,
still
is it
appreciate the
Restream
comment.
or is it Twitter? I think it might be a Twitter thing. I'm sure Restream would do it if they could.
You probably have to be like a hack or something where they go to the original tweet and just as replies come in, they check and do it, because it's not like a chat service. It's a posting service, so it's slightly different. But this is good. Luke got the notification on his iPhone. Great. Oh, Facebook is here. Yeah, we got one Facebook person. It's like a bummer about Facebook. Like you spend all this time like building your audience on Facebook, and then you share something and nobody sees it. I just hate Facebook so much. It's just such a waste of time. Does Restream go to Instagram or no?
I've not checked. I don't remember seeing
so the better answer, producer Justin, is let me check. Don't know, let me check. Don't be scared when I ask something. Just own it. We don't know. Let me check. Boom. You got the notification on Discord. That's great. Send Profit is here. Great to see all these great folks.
Were you asking if it goes to our Instagram, or in general, can it go to Instagram?
I was asking, can it go to Instagram? Which by default would mean, is it going to our Instagram? You could answer both questions. That would be a great way to anticipate my next question.
It cannot go to Instagram.
So therefore, it's not going to Instagram.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It looks like you can restream pre-records via to Instagram, but that's it. Only pre-records, which is odd.
Yeah, when we were doing some of that, we had a piece of software that would we were running a 24-hour channel on YouTube, but I'm reticent to do that with all the episodes, even though it's kind of cool and we did get a lot of views on it, because we were doing it on Twitter. We had all the episodes running constantly live on Twitter, but people were complaining because they thought it was live and it wasn't. And so I was like, it's kind of better to just have it be live when it's live and have it be not live when it's not hack that. All right, so let's get into our.
I'm here.
Oh, and nobody cares, Nick. Nobody cares. You're here.
That was rude.
Probably not wearing pants. You probably have 3 drinks in you. You could be wearing Lululemon shorts.
No drinks in me.
Jason bringing the Chamath energy here.
There's no way that Nick has
that was rude.
Is not pre-gaming.
No pregame, nothing at all.
Really?
Only cop
you still sound sick, actually.
I was in traffic. Believe it or not, when you leave the city for a couple of days, you get into the country. There's traffic on the roads. It's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, it is crazy to experience being stuck in traffic again. I had that happen. I was in the city in San Francisco, and I was coming down like one of those streets in the FIDI, and it was backed up 3 blocks. Which used to be 20 blocks, but I was just like, oh my God. And it was like, Waze is like, you're going to be stuck in traffic for 6 minutes. And I was like, what? I was like,
this is bullshit.
What? Usually it would be like, you're in traffic for 40 minutes trying to get out of San Francisco.
Outside the office now, it's backed up from 4 p.m. again. It's like
is it really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
All the lanes or just the 3 lanes getting on the
3 lanes. Yeah, the 3 lanes.
So you can still zip on the right. You knew it was getting bad when the right lane was backed up.
I mean, that happens around about 6 o'clock. 5 to 6.
I think people are coming back into the city. Maybe not tech workers, but other workers are starting to come back.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, I was just looking at some of that. There are some statistics out, and I was listening to Scott Adams, the cartoonist, has a live stream he does, and sometimes at night if I'm like working, I put YouTube on the background, and I'm subscribed to his channel, and he'll come up next. And he was talking about the study where they had like 700 people with this Pfizer pill, and I guess that's coming out in January. So if you take it in the first 5 days of getting COVID, or 7 days, it just like it's a miracle basically. So all these people who Scott Adams blocking me because at some point he said something about George Floyd, and I was like, that comment's not going to age well, and he blocked me. He's pretty sensitive. I like watching Scott Adams because he is he's right wing, and he's kind of angry and chippy at times, but he's really smart, and he kind of predicted Trump, so he's really like gets into making predictions. And then he's really into persuasion. You've been hearing me talk about persuasion and stuff like that, which I studied in college. But just listening to him, he really talks about, because he's a hypnotist. He's a trained hypnotist, or he claims to be, and I have no reason to doubt him. He gets a little angry. And he, like me, has a thing about China because he has a stepson who died from a fentanyl overdose. And I think it was because of these pressed pills. And so when he gets talking about, his live stream's really good because he gets talking about China, fentanyl. Sometimes he gets emotional about it. And like, I've seen him cry on the stream 2 or 3 times. And it's like a lot of humanity there. He just, every morning he wakes up and in his pajamas at 7 a.m. exactly, he just talks for an hour about the news. Now, I don't agree with him on half of it maybe. But I appreciate it.
To draw a line in the sand politically is a bit of a flawed exercise, though, isn't it? I mean, we're all a bit left, we're all a bit right. Like,
I liked it better when we went to like Thanksgiving specifically, and there was a divergence of opinions, and people still had a great time playing softball, eating turkey, and maybe some people got into it a little bit, have a little debate, and then you go home and you. But now it's just like so many people are just like, for self-care reasons, I cannot go to Thanksgiving, and I get it. Like, if
that's crazy.
I know it's crazy, but if you were part of a group targeted by Trump, and then you got to go there and like somebody sticking in your face a little bit, like, I don't know.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's crazy for someone to take those actions. I'm saying it's crazy that we've gotten to this point.
It's all Putin's plan. Putin's plan, China's plan, is to basically figure out what is our biggest weakness, because we're so powerful for a 300. We're the third largest country, but we're 1.4, 1.3 behind billion in China and India. We're only 350, so we're a quarter of the size of those countries, but we dominate them in innovation and all this other stuff. And so they're very worried about us. So they know our weakness: politics, the open political system, misinformation, race, freedom of speech, gun control. They just know it. I keep bringing this up with Sachs on the All In podcast, and I've tried to talk to him about this. I was like, do you realize that like you're falling into this? Like, you're like, oh, there was no collusion. Oh, there was collusion. What Putin wants us to do is lose our minds talking about collusion. And what Putin did also is he just spreads money everywhere and chaos everywhere. He's like the Joker. So he tries to pay off everybody, left, right, center. Chinese do the same thing. Chinese sends in, all kinds of black widows and, grifted money. And they try to get all these senators, congressmen, politicians, local ones, all in on the take, all compromised sexually, whatever. There was that one guy out here in California who, like, some Chinese spy had compromised, allegedly. And then we start fighting over the Steele dossier. Putin probably wrote half the Steele dossier, like, they are just trying to create chaos. And Paul Manafort was in on the take and colluding with the Russians, but maybe other people weren't. And they just try to create chaos. And then, Sachs wants to take the position, oh, there was no collusion. That's not true. And then other people on this side want to take it like, Trump is a sleeper, like a Manchurian candidate. He's been hypnotized and he's suddenly going to come out and assassinate somebody and hand the republic over to, Putin or China. And it's like, no, it's neither of those things. It's chaos being created.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, I just saw that in the good one, Beard and Script. Yeah. You can actually look at this. There's a famous KGB person. I don't know if you've ever seen this. KGB defector explains.
Oh, look, yeah, Beard Script.
Russian subversion tactics. So this guy, Yuri Bezmenov, he's very famous. And if you want to go down the rabbit hole, everybody, I'll put this in the chat. This guy, Yuri Bezmenov, he explains this all in videos, interviews, and he explains in a warning to Americans this whole concept. It's really interesting because he's a former KGB guy. Let me put this in here for you. Oh, so you already pulled it up. You're way ahead of me.
We're in danger of turning into Adam Curry here.
No. It's very well-known KGB techniques. What they did was they tried to create chaos, and then they try to get you to not understand what the truth is, and then that makes you give up. So they did this in Russia. Nobody can tell what the truth is. Everybody's evil. Everybody's compromised. Therefore, don't criticize Putin. So what Putin's trying to do is make America look so bad that his citizens don't criticize Putin, because he says, look at their race issues. Like, they're in the streets battling each other. They're looting. They're murdering each other. There's guns everywhere. Look, Russia's so safe and amazing by comparison. So that's what they're trying to do. And they basically tried to blame America for creating the HIV virus. And so they did like a 20-year arc to try to like embed stories, get these like Germans to publish some fake paper out of Africa about this kind of stuff. It's Yurt is legit. I mean, this is not like MKUltra was a real program. So if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, there are conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. If you don't know about MKUltra,
come for the checklist, stay for the conspiracy theories.
MKUltra program, not the strain of weed, for those millennials who are like, oh yeah, I love that. You can just look at Project MKUltra on the Wikipedia. It was the CIA was trying to figure out if they could use certain drugs, psychoactive drugs, very specifically LSD, which was a new thing back then. They wanted to see if they could get that to compromise people or take as like a truth serum, but they had no idea. It was very new. They didn't know the impact of it, and so they basically dosed a lot of people and did all kinds of tests and did these kind of tests without people knowing it. So they did tests where they would just give it to soldiers and put them in the field. It was crazy. Experiments included administering LSD to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and prostitutes, people who could not fight back, as one agent officer put it. I'm reading from the Wikipedia. In one case, they administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days. They also administered LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, and other government agents. Members of the general public to study their reactions. LSD and other drugs were often administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent, so violation of the Nuremberg Code. U.S. had agreed to after World War II. The aim of this was to find drugs which could bring out deep confessions or wipe a subject's mind clean and program them as a robot agent. In other words, the Manchurian candidate. So this all happened because Richard Albert, Allen Kinsley, Allen Ginsberg, Ken Kesey, and all those were in Menlo Park here in the Bay Area. And they were studying all this stuff, psilocybin, mescaline, all this stuff, DMT. It's pretty crazy. And so there was a big overlap between the CIA, Silicon Valley, and the birth of Silicon Valley in the late 60s was based on hippie culture and psychedelics. And that informed a lot of the creations that were made here. In fact, there are, famously, Steve Jobs said he, had his like major breakthroughs on LSD. And there was this rumor of his office had like a secret room that would be like his tripping room. And I'm not speaking out of turn here, that there's been coverage of this like secret room concept. But really, if you want to jump down the rabbit hole this weekend, there are many MKUltra documentaries and stuff like that out there. And so if Project MKUltra was something that came out because of Freedom of Information Acts, et cetera, you got to think that there were like one or two things left of that were even more covert that haven't come out, right? So, I mean, just because it's people are calling it a conspiracy theory today doesn't mean it's not true. And then that doesn't mean all conspiracy theories are true. All right. Here we go. Episode 9.
All right.
I like
right now, you guys don't even know what to do. You guys literally, they're just like, what do we do here? Yeah, Zuck has a room. He has a secret room where he pops Adderall to write code faster.
I was going to say he bumps Adderall all day.
Bangs Adderall with his team to rewrite Snapchat. All right, here we go. Episode 9. 3, 2. Okay, everybody, welcome to should I just do this straight from the top of the show? Because this is going to be no news put in front of it, or is there news in front of it?
No, there is going to be news put in front of it.
Right.
But
Okay. Then I'll start it as okay. Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Next up on the pod, episode 9 of the Startup Checklist. This is going to be the most important part of the checklist for most of you. It's the one you all asked for, which is how do you run a fundraising process? Everybody wants to secure the bag. Money equals power. Money equals resources to finish a product, to get to scale, etc. And so people ask me all the time, how do I run a fundraising process? Well, at the Launch Accelerator, we took the fundraising process and we really made it into a scientific process. I'm going to reveal some of that today on the Startup Checklist, episode 9. You can look at all of the items on the checklist at thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. And if you want to talk to all of our producers at once, you just email producers@thisweekinstartups.com. One disclaimer, we do not take pitches for the podcast. If you do pitch somebody to be on the podcast, as a PR person, we're likely going to put them in the penalty box and not have them on for a year or two, because we don't like to have people tell us who to have on the podcast. We have 3 full-time producers. I'm sitting on maybe 10 pitches from them of people they should have on the pod. Now, if you are a fan of the pod and you want to see somebody on the pod, you can just do that publicly on Twitter and say, hey, would love to have, the founder of Airbnb on the pod. And you just mention them and publicly give them a little nudge. That's fine. But we take our own counsel on who to have on the podcast. We do not take pitches, period. And I've instructed my team to be very hardcore about that. Anytime they get a pitch from anybody, PR, we reply with, thanks, we don't take pitches for the podcast. Best. And I send these 5 times a day. And I like sending them because I like people to know, to stop sending pitches. You're just not going to get somebody on the program ever. We do this. It's our job to find great guests, and it's not yours as a PR person. And then there's all these folks out there who are running booking services where you can sign up and then they guarantee you to get on a couple of podcasts. And somebody had put me in their documents and I went ham on this person. Nobody can buy you on this podcast. So this one person was kind of insinuating that he had the inside line on this. What he had done was a real scumbag move, I'll be honest. He had talked to our sales department about buying ads for a customer. Then he launched this other parallel business where he was booking guests. And then he put that we were one of his partners. And then he also put NPR Radio Lab was one of his partners. Hey, dude, what the fuck are you doing here? You don't get to book people. He's like, oh, I'm not saying that. I'm like, that's what the pitch deck is for. He's like, oh, well, I talked to your ad salespeople. I was like, yeah, I'm going to destroy you if you do this again. Please do not say that you can get people on this podcast. You cannot. All right. End of rant. Let's get into it. Let's break it down. Item number 81.
Wait, you should tell people how to get on this podcast.
Here's how you get on this podcast. 1, do something interesting in the world. 2, be successful. 3, see items 1 and 2. No, 3, have a hot take on something that people are talking about in the world. Write a great blog post.
Use memes to start a $10 million venture fund.
Use memes to start a $10 million venture fund. Mix it up on Twitter. Have something interesting to say. But generally speaking, I would say building interesting stuff in the world, having a great track record is how you get on the pod. And it's our job to find great things. And you see, we are filling up our dance card here with all kinds of great features, etc. And so it's sort of don't call us, we'll call you. If you're meant to be on the pod, you're meant to be on the pod. My producers listen to, I don't know, they check in on all the different podcasts out there. So, if somebody's been on other podcasts and been on Tim Ferriss or something, we know it. And if they would be good on our podcast, yeah, maybe we'll have them on. Or Joe Rogan or something. We're watching all the podcasts out there. We know if there's some sleeper guest that comes on a, niche podcast, maybe they're on Pomp's podcast or Meb Farber's or whatever, 20-Minute VC. There's all these great podcasts out there. If somebody's on one of those, Knowledge Project, and we think, hey, they might have a good conversation with us that we can build on, we'll find that out too. So sometimes doing a good performance on another podcast is another way to get here. Because I'll ask my team, when they suggest somebody, listen to other podcasts they've been on. Are they actually a good guest? Are they honest? Do they talk like a PR person? We want guests who can be real. And can you imagine somebody coming on here media trained? It's going to be... They have come on media trained, and it gets unmedia trained immediately when I say, hey, you didn't answer my question. But thanks for that answer. It was really delightful media training. I've actually said that to people. Like, don't give me the media trained answer. Give me the real answer. And that really makes PR people lose their minds. Okay, let's get started. These are items 81 to 90 on the checklist. Again, thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. Item 81, be able to pitch your startup effectively and concisely. This is something that seems super obvious, but oh my Lord, people do not know how to pitch their own startup. And if you are not practicing 10, 20 times, recording yourself, looking at a transcript of yourself, you're not doing deliberate practice. You need to deliberately practice your pitch. This is uncomfortable. Set up a camera, record yourself pitching, then make a transcript, look in the transcript for the ums and the ahs, highlight them, then do a second shot at it. And you want to get good at presenting your product, but you also don't want to sound like a robot. So you're not reading a script. The slides are your guides. So you don't want to memorize your deck in like a script. What you want to do is when the slide comes up and you're giving your presentation, that fires off in your mind what you're supposed to talk about, and you can actually read the slide. So we say internally at the Launch Accelerator, the slide is your guide. Don't memorize it. When you click next slide, the slide should guide you through what you're supposed to say. Now, remember the 5 golden rules of pitching. This is something I've come up with from when we had Meet the Alley, which you can look for the New York Times story. In 1996 or 1997, I hosted an event called Meet the Alley, where I had 5 people present startups to Ted Leonsis, myself, and a bunch of other venture capitalists. Meet the Alley was the name of that one. So that's when I started doing pitch competitions, literally in 1997 at the Loft at 600 Broadway, pseudo.com. And I did TechCrunch 40, created that with Mike Arrington, and then went on to do the Launch Festival. So I know how these pitches work after sitting through thousands of them and coaching hundreds of people on them. Here's your 5 golden rules. And this is so 81.1. Number 1, get to the product in 15 seconds. You really want to get to that product in 15 seconds. You want people to see it so that their neurons fire and they are like, oh, whoa, there's an Uber app. Oh, there's calm.com. Number 2, examples matter. If you can't give crisp examples of people using your product, then you suck as a founder or you're not being diligent. You really want to show your product in action. And the way to do that is with a specific example. Why is a specific example a great way to do this? Because then now they've seen the product, they've seen the specific example. They can now start to imagine other scenarios where your product might be in action. So Airbnb comes up as an example. Okay, meet Susan. Susan is in college. She's looking for what she's going to do at spring break. She has a budget of $1,200. She looks and she finds that she can get a hotel, in Paris for the cheapest hotel is $179. So Paris is out of the question. She wants to go for 8 days. That would have blown her whole budget, just those 8 days. But look, there's a room available that she can rent for $60. Okay, well, maybe she can make it because that's going to be $500 for the room for 8 days. And, oh, look, she found a ticket for $379 in coach. Hey, she's still in budget. Now she can afford to go to Paris, which is her dream, as opposed to going to Tampa for spring break. Great, boom. That example shows you that Airbnb allows people who would normally go to a domestic trip to go on an international one. It gives you the price, and it just shows you why this matters, right? Because people can take trips that are longer and more interesting than they previously could. So really think about that. Number 3 is synchronicity. What you're talking about should match what's on the screen. So when I was doing that example, if on the screen was our projections, now people are reading the projections or they're reading your mission statement or whatever you got on the screen, and you're telling them a story. So cognitively, what happens? What you should do is you should say, hey, meet Susan. Boom, Susan's picture comes up on the screen. Click. She is deciding with her $1,200 budget where to go. Click. And now you show the first option. Okay, here's our first option of Paris in a hotel. Doesn't work. Click. Now her friend tells her about Airbnb, and she finds this beautiful extra room in a garden, and it's small, but she doesn't need a lot of space because she wants to be out on the streets of Paris. Boom. What you're saying matches what's on the screen, and screens want to move. So I love when somebody's doing one of those pitches and they 1, 2, 3 reveal 3 things on the screen, right? 1 slide, 1 message is point number 4. You are not writing a novel when you're doing a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation or Google Slides. So 1 slide, 1 message. People will be like, our business model, and they have 4 different paragraphs with 6 different bullets. That's a deal memo. 1 slide, 1 point. If you have 3 different business models you're considering, but you shouldn't. You should really be focused on one, maybe two. Our business model is one, we're a marketplace. We take 5% on either side of the market for a total take rate of 10%. Slide 2, we also offer a SaaS offering. Slide 3, we also are considering a white label product. Boom. One slide each, not on the same slide. Why? You want people to remember it. You want to let the slides breathe, and you want to keep the slides moving. If the slides are moving, people are going to stay engaged, especially in the age of being at an event or being online. Point number 5, show, don't tell. Don't tell us what your product does. Show us your product in action. Don't give us vague descriptions. Show us data. Show us your customers. Show us the product in action. Show, don't tell. So whenever you're telling people stuff, but it's not being shown on the screen or not being shown in an example, you've kind of failed, right? And it breaks that synchronicity I talked about before. And remember, bullet point 22 on this checklist is, in fact, one simple sentence to explain your startup. Can you do it? Can you do the OSS? One simple sentence, no jargon, no marketing speak. Just say what the company does in the most basic way. Airbnb lets people rent rooms. And that's enough, because obviously in that sentence, the other side of it is that people can rent it and people can host people. Boom. Uber is everybody's personal driver. Boom. We get it. Having a personal driver is dope. Get a ride in minutes with your smartphone. Boom. Get anything delivered in 15 minutes. Uber Eats, or the new Uber Eats sort of mission statement. So you're going to want to make this deck with your team. You're going to want it to be tight. You're probably going to have 3 different versions of it. You'll have a deck that you can send to people over email that doesn't have confidential stuff in it. It's called a teaser deck. It's typically 10 slides or less. Then you're going to do a deeper dive in a 20, 30, 40 slide deck. That would be done in 20, 30, or 40 minutes. 1 minute per slide is generally a good rule of thumb. Sometimes people like to go even 20, 30 seconds per slide. In the example I was saying, where you're clicking, hey, we have 3 business models, you can move pretty briskly through those, 10 seconds each. Okay, that's enough of what I'll tell you for being ready to present. Point number 82 on our checklist: do you know how to find investors? I know this sounds stupid, but half of my life when I tell somebody this is an area we invest in, they're like, well, do you know anybody who invests in this area? It's like, do you know about Crunchbase? Do you know about PitchBook? Do you know about Google? I mean, this is really simple, folks. Look at your startup. Okay, you're in on-demand. So you're like DoorDash, Uber, but you're on-demand pet grooming. Great. Who has worked in on-demand before? Okay, if you're an Uber investor, you're an Instacart investor, you understand somebody coming on demand, press a button, all those massage services, press a button, dog walking services, press a button. Okay, this is going to be related to those. Therefore, you find investors who have invested in that space before. Also, have they invested in any consumer technology? Have they invested in any e-commerce technology? Well, you just work backwards. You look at who's invested in adjacencies or verticals around or that your startup is in, and you will be able to build a target list. Not only that, you want to drill down and double click again, not just the firm, but who in the firm. So you might have somebody in the firm, when you look at their profile page online, you look at their Twitter and you're targeting them, they're only talking about SaaS startups and they only have SaaS startups, and you're this grooming on demand. Well, you want the partner who does consumer or maybe who does commerce, because you're kind of in that sector. So you really want to understand not just which firm, but who at which firm. And then adding to this complexity is some people do seed, some people do growth, some people do Series A, some people do the life of it. And there might be different partners at a firm who do the growth round when it's 25 million or more. And there might be somebody who's a scout who writes the 100K check and everything in between. So understand the stage at which those investors, and you want to make a qualified list of targets. We suggest 150 in the Launch Accelerator, 150 people. You email them, you follow up with them 2 or 3 times. Maybe you get to 50 meetings, 40 meetings, 1 out of 3,
You're spoiling
1
the
out of
funnel.
4.
We have this on a later bullet point. Don't spoil the funnel.
Okay. So anyway, you want to get to about 150 of those investors. Okay. Checklist item number 83. Do you know how to build a fundraising pipeline? If you're in sales, you understand what this means. But basically, you want to start with 150 targets, really curate that list. You're hoping to get first meetings with 1 out of 4, 1 out of 3, depending on how awesome your startup is, how alluring it is, how hot your category is. You might get 10%, you might get 20%, you might get none, you might get a third. I think that would be the upper bound. And it really depends on how targeted that list is. If you're putting biotech investors on the list and you're, let's say, a SaaS business, well, they're obviously not going to even respond. But if they're in the SaaS business and they're, Craft Ventures, great. And then you have to know, well, Jeff at Craft is the person who does marketplaces, and Brian and Sachs are the one who they do the SaaS stuff. So you have to understand which partner. You email the wrong partner, they may forward it to their partner. That partner never gets back to you. Boom. Now you've burned one of your leads. So be considered when making that list. It's not a race to throw people on it. You want to really curate it and go slow. This is like really being thoughtful about picking that list. I get people who just send generic emails and they're basically spamming 1,500 investors. That's the wrong way. You're doing it wrong if you're doing that. You want to really target these in, and you really want to be able to understand your target. First meetings, maybe you get a third. Maybe you get, 30, 40 of them. Maybe even 50, who knows? And if you can convert a third of those or half of those even to a second meeting, now you know something's good. If they want that second meeting, you are in really good shape. But I would expect a severe drop off. So let's say you got to 40, now you're down to 20 or 15, maybe 10 go into diligence, maybe 5 go into diligence, maybe 3 go into diligence, and maybe you get 1 to 3 term sheets. 150 targets, really carefully selected to get but 1, 2, 3, 4 term sheets. In other words, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 75 of your targets wind up giving you a term sheet. That's the funnel. It's a numbers game. Just like sales, just like dating, everything is a numbers game in this regard when you're trying to find a match with something that is, super important. It varies greatly, and you will get judged based on that email you send, right? And we'll talk about that template right now. Item number 84. Do you know Jason's perfect cold template email? Do you know that? The perfect cold email? Short and to the point. Examples matter. Hi, hi, Steve. We saw your interview on This Week in Startups where you talked about your investment in Robinhood. We're doing something similar in Latin America for millennials, and we're also doing cryptocurrency. We currently have 1,400 customers. We charge $25 a month for unlimited trades and to be able to talk to a money manager. And here's a quick product demo at this link. And here's a Loom. If you don't know what a Loom is, it's basically a video where Loom is a company that helps you make these, but you can use any piece of software to do it. It's basically you're presenting and there's a little picture in a picture of you talking. And so you can really make it custom. You can send somebody a Loom. Hey, Steve, it's Jason. Want to walk you through my deck just to save you time. So you basically take that first meeting, you put it in the deck. Pretty cool if you're good at presenting. Charts work, but you want it to be short. If you write a novel, that's not what you're doing here. Just think of it like a trailer. The trailer is not the entire movie. The trailer is to get you to buy a ticket to the movie. That's what this email is. You're trying to get people to buy a ticket and come see the whole movie, which is your long presentation, which by long, I mean in today's terms, a 20, 30-minute Zoom, 15-minute presentation, in all likelihood, 15 minutes of Q&A. Okay. Now, checklist item number 85. Do you know Loom, Zoom, Room? Okay, this is pretty standard now. People are sending Looms or short emails with a short deck. Pretty much the same thing. The Loom is kind of like a higher level if you're good at presenting and you really want to impress people that you took time. There's a reciprocation here. Oh my God, the person took the time to make me a custom video where they walk me through the deck and they address me by knowing who I am and they've heard me on podcasts and they've read one of my Medium posts. Man, that's just like huge VC bait. You're a fan of theirs. When I get emails, oh, I'm a big fan. I loved All In episode 55. Your Chris Sock interview was great. This tweet really spoke to me. I am now building this startup that does X, Y, and Z. It's perfect for your syndicate because we're at $25,000 a month in recurring revenue. And I heard you say that on a podcast. Boom.
Yeah, it's also, Jason, I'd add that it's like a virtuous cycle, right? Every new Loom that you do is essentially another rep at your product demo.
Yeah. Now, think about this. Every time you do one of these Looms, it's another rep. It's you getting another swing at bat. So if you did 10 of these a day for 10 or 15 minutes, I think it's a pretty good use of time. You're going to get pretty darn good at it. And you're going to get feedback. So you send 10, one person replies. What do they say in the reply? Oh, really like the Loom. but you didn't talk anything about your customers. Okay, now you know when you do the next 10, start with your 3 best customers. You want to lead with what's strongest in these things as well. So if your product's really strong, lead with that. If your traction's really strong, lead with that. If your team is really strong, lead with that. Oh yeah, we're 3 engineers out of Facebook, Amazon, and Google. We actually worked together recently at Coinbase, and now we're starting our own DAO platform. You're like, whoa, look at that resume. You just de-risked the whole thing for me. You guys know what you're doing. You gals know what you're doing. Fantastic. So think that through. And then once you've done the Loom, you're trying to get a Zoom. This is so low risk for people. Hey, can we do a quick Zoom? I'm available 7 days a week from 4 a.m. and 24 hours a day. You tell me when you're available. And here is a link on my calendar to 30 minutes, 45 minutes or an hour, whatever works best for you. And now you're showing like, oh, wow, you'll do this in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or 40 minutes. Wow, you really respect my time. So that's a power move. When somebody's like, I just need 10 minutes, I'll run you through the deck and answer any questions you have. It's like, oh, great. You don't need to have lunch with me. You don't need 2 hours. Like we can get through this pretty quickly and see if there's a match. So the Loom gets them on the hook. The Zoom builds that rapport and answers any question. And then maybe you'll get in the room with them if you're local, or maybe they'll come fly and see you now that COVID's ending. So I think that's going to be the new process. Loom, Zoom, Room. Got it. Item 86 on our list. You want to nail that first meeting. If you're in fact going to do this. You really want to be super, super tight, and you want to be prepared. So most people will say, start with venture firms that you don't care about as much, or investors who are not your top ones. So you can spend 2 weeks pitching people who aren't your ideal customers. You get those reps in, you get the feedback, and then you move on to your top targets. Little tip there. Start with the people you're not really concerned with winning them as a business, and then the people you really want to win as investors and partners you can put in week 2 or 3. The best practice, have 2 decks with you. Hey, Jason, want to be respectful of time? I have a 5 to 10 minute deck. It's 10 slides. And then I have and as an appendices, if you want to drill down into anything. And then I have a 15, 20 minute deck. That's 30 slides. And, 10 of those slides really go into our go-to-market strategy, and 5 of them go into the total addressable market as we see it. I'm not sure which one you want to do today. And then now you've come across again as being super considered. Not sure how much you know about shipping. We're Flexport. We want to talk to you about our product and our service. We can do the 20-minute, 25-minute one, which has a primer on the shipping industry, or we can do the quick 5 to 12-minute one and we'll just tell you about our business and our performance. This just puts you on a higher level. You're really thinking about the other side of the table as opposed to yourself in the meeting. I do this as an investor. When they ask me, I say, what's best for you? Would you like to do 10 minutes of presentation, 10 minutes of questions? I've already reviewed the deck. You just want to talk for 10 minutes, 20 minutes? What works best for you? Well, I really want to show you the product. Okay, great. Show me the product. And that's a nice back and forth. And I like that back and forth because I like to see how gracious the founder is and their EQ, right? Not IQ, but EQ. Like how emotionally intelligent are they? Not just how intelligent they are. And you can always tell them, I can send you the appendices, I can send you the deck, afterwards you can go deeper dive in it. You got to be high energy. You got to be super positive. You got to really get people excited about what you're doing. You want to be prepared to answer questions concisely. What's your revenue? Last month, we had $27,000 in recurring revenue. For 2021, our yearly revenue will be $470,000 on target. Short answers, concise. Why? Listen to their question, give them the answer. Now they can ask you another question. It's like ping pong. Boom. You're hitting the ball back and forth. They ask a question, you answer the question in as much time as they took to ask the question. That's ideal. Back and forth in a volley. They asked a question. It took them 2 or 3 sentences. You answered it in under 2 or 3 sentences, maybe in 1. Now, wow, crisp back and forth is going. They're going to be able to ask you more questions. Don't waste their time. Don't filibuster. Don't make excuses, just concise answers. Own your traction. And we actually record people answering questions. We categorize questions in our accelerator, and we try to figure out, like, how long are you taking to answer this question, and was that ideal? You took 70 seconds to answer this question, and the question was, tell me about your team. Okay, that might be appropriate. The question was, how many employees do you have? How many team members you currently have? You took 70 seconds. Like, maybe that should take 7 seconds. We currently have 5 full-time employees and 3 contractors. Boom. Great. Tell me about your contractors. What are you outsourcing right now? Tell me about your next 2 hires. Now the investor can ask you more questions and get into that nice rhythm, like in a tennis volley or a ping pong volley that we've all been able to experience in our lives. Before the meeting ends, you want to make sure you have clear action items and next steps. And just asking outright, do you think you want to invest in this round? Would you like to go to diligence? What's the next step for you? Would you like us to present at your partnership? Would you like a couple of days to think about it? You really want to take ownership of this moment in time when the meeting's wrapping up. Is there any other questions I can answer for you? Would you like to move into diligence? Do you want to do another meeting? Would you like to talk to some customers? Would you like to meet the team? We really would love to have you in this round. So just be forward like that. You're our dream investor, Jason. We'd like you to lead the round. Would you be interested in that? Have you thought about, would you like to put a term sheet in? Just be there. Be concise like that. That is a sign of like confidence. That means you're going to do that when you're hiring somebody or closing a customer. That's great for us to see as a VC. You want to be forward. You want to be just, let's consummate here. Let's do it. Let's be in business together. If in fact you want to be in business together, and you should know that going into the meeting, that this is your target. You do want to be in business with them. Okay. Checklist item number 87. Can you nail the post-meeting follow-up? Again, you have to follow up. Do not sit there and be passive. Be positive. Think about things that maybe weren't clear in the meeting or that you stumbled on that you might be able to provide more clarity on. Oh, you had asked me about our hiring roadmap. Talk to the team. We actually spent some time thinking about that, and we made this Notion page. Here's the Notion page. If you click on it, you can see our year 1, year 2, and year 3 hiring plans. Wow. You had some great piece of feedback. You asked us about competitors, and if we were aware of this one, we weren't. We actually looked at it. Here's the key differentiator. They're not doing SMB. They're only doing large enterprises. We're starting in SMB. We might go into their market, but we don't think they're going to go downstream for us. Thanks for tipping us off. Never lie, never bend the truth. And you want to create a sense of urgency here. So, hey, we have 2 term sheets. We're wondering if you'd like to submit a term sheet. We're going to try to make a decision this Friday. We're asking everybody to have their term sheets in on Friday. And maybe including exciting updates. Hey, we met 3 weeks ago. Would love to hear back from you. Wanted to let you know we closed 2 more enterprise customers, one for $2,000 a month, and one is paying us actually $40,000 upfront for the year. Now, $15,000 of that is consulting services, but it is our largest reoccurring revenue at $25,000 a year. So really excited about that deal with Sony. That kind of stuff, man, it shows you're making progress even during the fundraising process. Item number 88, do you know how to diligence your potential investors? Yes, you, the founder, should be diligencing your investors. Very simple. Your diligence just means researching. And you want to do backdoor dark references. What does that mean? You're going around the back door. You're not telling them you're doing a reference. You look, you see who they've invested in, and you just email the founders. Hey, I'm thinking about having Jason on my cap table. What do you think of Jason? Boom. You email 100 folks, you're going to get 99 great answers. There might be 1 or 2 people I didn't see eye to eye with. That's okay. If somebody didn't see eye to eye to them and they're just like, hey, yeah, Jason and I didn't vibe. Okay, that's fine too. You're going to have that, but you at least want to know that. And then you can come to me and say, hey, I talked to somebody. They said like, yeah, you left the board. It was good. I said, yeah, we didn't see eye to eye on the future of the company. So we left the board. We gave them back the board. See, we sold our shares back. It's like, okay, great. Didn't work out. Does anybody expect this always to work out in our industry? Of course not. So this is a great way for you to really understand what is going on. Some investors, they just write checks, they're hands off. You might be looking for an investor like that. Other ones are super, super deeply involved. Other ones, can be just a huge negative experience. You might remember we had Ryan Callback on the program, and he had detailed his nightmare VC experience with Craig Shapiro from Collaboration Fund. We invited Craig to go on this podcast. He declined, or I should say, didn't even respond. And I heard from the back channel, Ryan was upset that I asked him about this experience, even though I told him I was going to ask him about when he was going to be on the podcast. Anyway, it's worth watching episode 1141 of this podcast when Ryan Callback was on talking about this nightmare experience with a VC, because he went into detail in this blog post, didn't mention the person's name. Everybody in the industry knew. Everybody tweeted, hey, it's this person. And, people, it's not too hard to figure out who was on the board. Long story short, it's a good episode to watch because you can see what happens when it goes bad. It can be pretty ugly. And and it doesn't mean that Craig Shapiro from the Collaboration Fund hasn't learned from this, or there's there's really three sides to every story. There's Ryan's, there's Craig's, and then there's reality. And so Rashomon, right? There's many different sides and versions of the truth, and you can take that all into account, right? Sometimes people don't vibe. That's okay. Okay, item number 89. You want to send a great investor update. Really write concise monthly updates. You can put people on your monthly update for non-investors, investors who have yet to invest. And you put them on a BCC, or you do like a mail merge. And you're like, hey, Jason, it was great meeting with you. Wanted to give you an update on the business. Things are going great. We grew 17% this month. And there's a chart at the top. Wow. When I see that chart and it starts trending and I'm like, I made a mistake, or, these folks have proven me wrong, or the concerns I had did not turn out to be true. Great. I can invest at a higher price perhaps, or give them a term sheet for their Series A or Series B if I passed on the seed or Series A. That is a great way to continue to re-engage investors who you spent the time to do one or two meetings with. You might as well see if maybe next year or the year after, or maybe your next startup in 4 or 5 years they want to invest in. Remember, people invest in lines, not dots. But if you make a bunch of dots over time, it might form a line, right? And that's what you're looking for. You're building credibility with the investment community. And the investment community is building credibility with the entrepreneurial community over time. And then your reputation kind of results in your matching and your performance. Okay, finally, item number 90. Understand all the SEC rules and regulations around fundraising. When you're raising 506B, that's the most common way. You don't talk about it publicly because then it puts you into this solicitation rules. With 506C, you can raise in public, but you have to confirm those investors are accredited by reviewing accreditation documents like W-2s or letters from the lawyers' accountants. That can be cumbersome or not. 506C usually costs more money because it takes more time. And folks usually hire a service to verify that accreditation. I think Assure Fund Management, which we're investors in and they do our back end, will do that for you. You really only want to invest money from people who understand the risk. That means accredited investors and people who are willing to lose the money. If you take $50K from your friends, your family, is it going to ruin the relationship, or do they have $50 million in $50K? They're totally fine with supporting you, and that's no big deal for you. That's like one night of poker for them. Okay, fine. But if that's like they're a third of their retirement account, you don't want to take that money, right? You don't want to be responsible for that. Maybe you take 5, which would be 3 or 4% of their retirement account, and they really want to support you. Okay, fine. But think it through. You got to be really careful with accredited investors here in the United States, and you need to have a great law firm advising you, and you need to do your research about this. But basically, you take money from accredited investors and you avoid this problem, or you use a platform like Republic, Seed Invest. Those are the two trusted ones, at least ones I trust. I don't trust the other ones, to be totally honest. And if you're going to do that route, then you can talk publicly about it, but there's a whole different set of rules for that. So make sure if you are going to be public, you understand the rules. It does add complication. I'm not saying don't do it, but it does add a lot of complication. If you can do it privately, you do it privately. Easy breezy. That's what your lawyers are going to tell you to do. Why wouldn't you do it privately if you can close it privately? And that's kind of what's screwed up about the accreditation laws, at least today when we're taping this in 2021. Maybe in 2022, 2023, you'll be able to do this publicly, and accreditation will come in the form of a license, not just how much money you have in your bank account. Okay, that wraps up episode 9. On episode 10, we're going to do the catch-up episode, and we're going to cover all the things we missed in the checklist. If you have things you think we missed, email producers@thisweekinstartups.com and tell us what you think should be on the checklist. Hopefully some super fans and stans and people who just are fans of the podcast will tell us what we missed. Okay, we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.
I have one punch up I thought of when you were going through, but I'm curious if you think it's valid or not. So right underneath, it's 0.82. I put it right there for 0.82. So if you have an investor that is in your stage and vertical, should you research when they closed their last fund and announced it? And if it was recently, is that like looking to deploy capital?
Totally. 3-2. One of the other things you want to know about your investors is, are they actually able to invest? Sometimes people will be between funds. Sometimes people will have deployed the fund and they're only doing follow-on investments. So you can just ask them very easily, are you actively investing? Do you tell me about your fund? Is it fully deployed? Is it half deployed? And what is your follow-on strategy? You can ask these kind of questions to understand what impact their fund structure and their timing is going to have on your round. And you're totally within your right to ask that. If people ask me that, I'm like, yeah, our fund 3 is halfway deployed, and yeah, we'll be raising our next fund at this date. I'm just making this up, by the way. This isn't true, but because I don't want to generally solicit here, but they will tell you what's really going on. Okay. All right, I got to bounce.
No worries. Good job.
All right, talk to you soon.
See ya.
See ya. Have a
Please
great
upload that
Thanksgiving,
quick
noties.
time.
I may. You never know. I may do a random holiday rogue transmission. So
You talk about